Hello, welcome back to our expressive drawing pen and wash. As you may have noticed, I've now managed to get rid of all the surrounding gumph, which is a bit of a shame that was on the other recording, but never mind, we'll crack on as it is for the moment. Now, the kind of paper that you use to do pen and wash on does alter what the actual finished piece will look like. I've got two pieces of paper here. You can definitely see this is white and this is cream coloured. Now this paper is much thicker, it's almost card, it's very smooth, very white. And this is really quite good for doing your pen and wash on. You can still use the cartridge paper, the more traditional paper, much thinner, it has a more yellowy look, and you can sort of feel that it's just slightly rougher. Now, I'm going to be using this white one for the moment, the much whiter paper, but it's worth experimenting on different papers. The ink will run in different ways, so I would give it a go on different kinds of papers when you start experimenting. So, what we're going to do first, I'm going to show you this one, and I'll show you how we did this one. Oh, just before I start, I will mention this particular brand that I've given you, obviously with this kind of online workshops around providing materials, I have to buy in bulk to be able to afford it at a reasonable cost to get them all out. And unfortunately, Beryl, which do the best fine liner for this, it's really good. The ink runs brilliantly. They don't do their black bulk buy so easily. They're harder to find. Which is why we've ended up with these. They still work, but if you do decide that you'd like to carry on doing this kind of thing yourself, I would definitely invest in a Beryl fine liner. They come in packs with of colours. They don't tend to, you can buy them individually. They don't come in large packs of black. Some of the colours will also run. A lot of cheaper felt tip pens you will find won't run in the same way, but Beryl fine liner I definitely would recommend. So this one, which we're going to use today, still works. So you need to put plenty of ink on your paper. So this bit for the sky. I recommend whenever you do the sky and water, straight lines actually work better than scribbles. It's going for straight scribbling. Let's see, I'm going to put, this is the horizon line here. Don't be nervous about putting on a lot of ink. We need to add water to this and the ink will run. You need enough ink on the paper for that to work properly. It's you can do it with a normal straight forward drawing, but it works better with this kind of slightly more scribbly style because of the sheer amount of ink that you want to get on it. It is a sketching technique, but it does make your drawings look great. You can use it for anything really. You don't have to do just landscapes. It works really well. I did a school project where the kids were drawing shoes. So I got them to trace a picture of a shoe because, let's face it, drawing a shoe isn't that interesting. I don't know why the school decided that the project was shoes, but it was. So I got them to trace the shoe, and then they worked over with the Beryl fine liner, added the water, and the shoes looked amazing. So you can make anything look good with this technique. Right, obviously I'm working quite quickly. Take your time. You don't have to do things super fast. Just because it's a scribble style doesn't mean you have to go really fast and not be considerate of what you're doing. Again, if you're not overly confident, you can already copy a picture that already exists, so you can kind of see what the previous person has done, previous artist has done. Now, what I'm going to show you with this one is that this was done with a Beryl fine liner, and the Beryl fine liner, if you add enough water to it, the lines actually get to the point where they disappear completely, which works really well for skies. Here you can see that the lines have actually bled away almost entirely. That won't happen with this pen in the same way. The ink is stays on the page slightly more. It still works, but it won't run in quite the same way. You won't be able to bleed away all of the lines. Okay, so don't worry if you can't do something exactly. The pen and the paper that the pictures have been done might vary. Now, one thing I will say is, before you add the water, it's very tempting to go, oh, I really want to add the water and see what happens. Do the entire picture first with your barrel fine liner. So look, I haven't done any of this bit down here. Okay, I'll put a little bit more in. I'll put these bits in down here. Okay. Plenty of ink, very important. There's no point doing I'll just do it over here. No point doing a very careful drawing. Right, I'm going to draw a house. There you go. Now I'm going to add the water. It won't work when it's just something like that. You need lots of ink on the page. Now, imagine that I've done it completely, put lots of ink on there, completed the picture. Then I get my water, just normal water, my paintbrush. Don't use a giant one and don't use a really tiny one. Use one of the sort of medium-sized ones. A 6 or a 4 is good. And then you add the water, and the ink bleeds, and you pull the ink like that. Don't do this. Pull the ink so you're controlling where it goes. There we go. And then down here, got lots of ink down here, so that's really good. I'm going to keep that really dark and moody in the distance. And then I'm going to pull the ink down. You're using the ink, you know, as if it was you were painting. Now, say you're doing the sky, and actually you don't want a lot of these marks, but you can't get the marks to completely disappear, that it's not bleeding away enough. What you can do is on another piece of paper, wrong pen, on another piece of paper, not actually on the picture that you're doing, I don't know if I find that. There we go. You can almost make a little palette. So there's loads of ink on there, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some water, and now the ink is on the end of the paintbrush, and I can effectively paint with that ink. So I could do the sky without any of the lines if I want that very wispy, cloudy effect, and I don't want these black lines. You might want those black lines, you might like the texture, but if you don't want the black lines and they haven't bled away enough, then do that. Make yourself a little inky splodge, add your water, the ink goes on there, and you can paint. Okay. Now, what's very important to remember is you do your work with your pen first. You put it to one side, you add your water. You might look at it and think, oh, actually, I'd like a bit more, this bit here is too light, I want it darker. So I'm going to go back in with my ink pen. You have to wait until it's completely dry. You will kill the pen if you use it on top of something that's already wet. Okay, keep them separate. This paper dries really quickly. There's not a huge amount of water on there, so it will dry pretty quickly, but you do need to make sure it's completely dry before you go back in with your fine liner. This is a picture that's done in that way, and you can see where the You can see the definition on the tree here. And then these trees are much paler. And what they've done is that they didn't put these trees in beforehand. What they did was that they had the ink on the paintbrush, and then used that to paint with this much paler image in the background. Also, with this particular picture, I went back in afterwards, once it was dry, with a biro and put in a little bit more definition. So this is a little bit of mixed media, because you've got ink and you've got biro. Both kinds of ink, but it's not quite the same. Okay, so you can work back in, put more definition in if you wanted more definition. Here, gone back in and put in a little bit more of the black pen, put in a little bit of work with a biro, which is much finer lines. You get quite a nice effect with that. There you go. So it's a lovely effect. Play around with it. You will find these particular pens will dye the paintbrush is purple. Don't worry, you don't have to use anything special to clean them with it. You just clean them with water. They have now been dyed a funny colour, but it won't affect their use. You can use them. It's not going to come out on anything else. Okay. Make sure you can see that. Yeah. So you can see that they've now been dyed a purple colour. It doesn't matter. They're still perfectly usable. Okay. One last thing. You can play around with different ways of putting the ink on and the water on. I would recommend not just drawing a picture and then just going over the whole thing with a load of water. You can give it a go if you're after a particular type of look. Maybe you've done a landscape and you want it to look very eerie and very pale, washed out look, in which case you might want to go over the whole thing. But I think they tend to look best when you've got the different tones. You've still got lots of plenty of dark ink. You've got the colour that has been pulled out, the ink that has run. Try and leave some of these white tones. It lifts the picture, okay? It lifts the picture when you leave some white, and it's quite important to try and leave that white. It's those little white tones that really give the lovely contrast, and drawings are lovely when there's quite a nice contrast in them. Okay. Something that's very similar to that technique is the same kind of idea, but you use charcoal instead. Now I'm using the rougher paper for this time, not that really smooth white one. This is the cartridge paper. It's got a slightly more of a tooth to it. I'm going to get a piece of charcoal, and you just draw a picture in exactly the same way as you did before. Okay. Now you have been given charcoal pencil and traditional charcoal. Use the traditional charcoal for this. Okay. Again, with this, you can't be too precise, really, with traditional charcoal. It's too chunky. So you really are just going for a lot of tone, not a lot of detail. Charcoal pictures are all about the tone. You know, you're not going to get a lot out of cross-hatching with charcoal. Right, I'm just doing this very quickly, just so you get the gist of it. Ooh. Some people will like working with charcoal, some people really hate it because it's that sort of chalky, makes your fingers go a bit funny. Just try and stick with it. It's often worth it. One of the reasons that I included the charcoal pencil is that if you really can't bear touching this kind of charcoal, then that's a good option. Right, so very simple, quick little basic drawing. Now what I'm going to do is I have got here a mixture of, it's not coffee, it's a jar. It's a jar that is full of glue. Am I going to be able to open it? It's glued stuck. Here you go, I'll use this one I prepared earlier. So this is a mixture of glue, PVA glue and water, equal amounts. Now obviously you haven't got tons of PVA glue, so I would use a very, something quite small. If you can find a very small container, put a blob of glue in it and then equal amounts of water. You don't want to waste tons of it. This would have been quite a big blob of water, glue with the water. Then what you do is that you use the water exactly the same way, and you go over the charcoal, and it makes the charcoal look a little bit more watercolory. You can paint with it in the same way, so it's on the paintbrush, and then you can use it like that. The other thing about using this is that it sets the charcoal without having to spray it. Charcoal, without being sprayed, can simply just be dusted off very quickly. Charcoal's not bad actually. It has, the longer you leave it on something, the more permanent it actually becomes. We'll be looking at charcoal more when we do our portraits. And actually, whilst I'm thinking about it, with your portraits, I haven't been able to put into your packs proper fixative. It's quite expensive. What you use is very cheap hairspray, really cheap stuff, if you can get some. That works quite well. There's always a risk when you spray something that, because obviously it is actually liquid, it's just coming out very fine, that a blob of it, of the liquid, can drop and then completely spoil your picture. So you can, not spray it at all. You just put a layer of tissue paper over it, a layer of paper, and don't touch it too much. Don't mess around with it, and actually the charcoal begins to adhere to the paper, quite well. As I said, we'll cover that later when we do portraits, but it's worth knowing now. If you can get some very cheap hairspray ready for in a few weeks' time, that would probably be quite a good idea. Okay, so again, you get it's a softer look. It's definitely not as well defined, but it can be quite lovely, and it's a way of setting your charcoal pictures as well. That will dry, and it will be, you can wipe hand over it and it will be fine. Okay, if you do use the watered down glue, make sure you clean those brushes well afterwards, because PVA glue will destroy your paintbrush very quickly when it dries. It's you don't need anything special to wash it out, you just need water. Just make sure it's really well washed out, and then that will be fine. Okay. Okay, on our sheet that came with your pack, it did say tape a pencil or a pen. A pen's probably better than a pencil, to be honest. Tape a pen to the end of a stick, okay, and draw with it. This again is a kind of game. I'm just looking for my tape, which has gone walled away. It's fairly basic, and you don't even really need me to show you how to do it. You tape your pen to a stick, you hold your stick at a distance, and you draw something. And it's a bit like your left-handed drawing, your wrong-handed drawing, and that you have very little control over it. It's very hard to control the pressure, and it's a way of just seeing what happens, going with the flow kind of thing. So that's worth having a go. Tape your piece of paper to the wall first, and do it standing up if you can. It's a bit easier doing it that way. The tape that I've given you, if you just use it very lightly, don't push it on too far, it will stick to the wall and come off very easily. It's just masking tape, it's not like normal sellotape. It's got quite a low tack to it. Okay, I think we've covered everything now in our expressive drawing. So give it a go, have a go doing all the things we've done. Remember, don't be afraid to trace something first, draw over the top of one of the pale pictures that I've given you. You can do patterns if you want to. There's one that someone left at a workshop that I'd done where they just done a pattern and added the water just to see what would happen. A favourite of teenagers is to draw an eye. With your bevel fine liner. Like that. And then you make them cry. Very good for tears. This particular technique most people get on with really well and do really enjoy doing. Part drawing, part painting. It's good fun, get lovely effects. Makes a very basic drawing look something special. There you go. A particular favourite for teenager. Next time we will be going on to our still life, so I shall see you then. Any questions, do feel free to drop me an email or a text and I will try to help. If you're really stuck with something or would like some more advice, we can always Zoom call at some point. I'm normally free in the evenings. So don't worry if you think I really need her to explain this again, I don't really get it, then I'm sure that there's a way that we can get in touch. That's absolutely fine. Okay, thank you very much. Bye.